Okay, the next thing we're going to do is now create the database for our inventory. So I'm going to come back here. We have inventory. Okay, now for inventory, right, we're keeping track of all egg entries as well as sales. That will be for the other section or other videos that we're going to do. But for now, we're just recording all egg entries over here. So I'm going to have transaction ID. Okay, so every record or record ID basically. The next thing we're going to have is the entry dates, and then we're going to have the dates. Now, the reason why I take the entry date is we want to see when the record is actually entered into the platform, and then the date is the date the person selected to for that particular record. So someone can record yesterday's entries today. So in the entry date, it will always give us today's date. So someone can actually record yesterday's entries, egg entries today, right? So the entry date will always give us the date or the moment when the entry was actually made. And the date is whenever the person is making the record for. So that's the record date, right? Okay. Then we have movement type. We have X harvested. Then we have damaged X. Okay, so X harvested is the X you're recording, how many X single units of X we received. And then damaged X is how many of those X are damaged and can be sold, right? Then we have X increase. Okay, so after we've gotten the number of eggs that can be sold, we're going to put them in crates, a crate of 30, right? So in Ghana, we sell eggs in crates, so a crate of 30. And then we have X without crates, right? X without crates. And then we're going to have recorded by. Okay, so these are the fields we have. We have the ID, we have the entry dates, we have the dates for that's the records date, we have the movement type. So currently for this particular video, everything is going to be X entry. And then we have the X harvested, how many quantities or how many units of X we harvested, how many of those X are damaged. And then we're going to have X in crates and X without crates. Okay, then we're going to have a recorded by. Just know who recorded or who made this entry into the app for future purposes if we need to refer. All right, so once we have this in place, what we're going to do is we're going to come back to our app over here. Okay, and then what we're going to do is now we're going to bring our inventory table over here. So I'm going to come back to data. Okay, and to bring a new table, you click on this plus button. Okay, and you click add table inventory. This should be all checked. Then click add to app. Okay, good. So now that we've added table to our app, what we're going to do is the first thing is to make sure that the data types are correct. Okay, so ID is text, that's fine. Date or entry date is date. We want it to be date time. So date time. And then we want the formula, so auto compute, to be now. Now will give you the date and the time. But today just gives you just the date. So we're going to set it to now. Now date is going to be just today. That's fine. And then movement type is text. That's also fine. But then we're going to make the initial value. Whenever you're entering, the value that will initially be provided will be X entry. That means you're entering a new quantity of X. So X entry. And then we have X harvested. So this is text. We're going to change this to number. Okay. And then we're going to make this label. Okay. The reason why I'm doing a label is because I don't want I think I should just create a view so it makes it easy for users to appreciate. So inventory. Okay. So I'm going to click show this in preview. Who are you? Let me put you here. Good. So this shows the position. So I'll place it here. Good. So let me go back here so you can appreciate what I was just doing. Okay, so date time. You see now this shows the date and the entry date and the time. And this is just date. That shows us the date. Movement type, X entry. So whenever someone is entering something here, the movement type will automatically be X entry. So label it as X entry. That means the person is recording new X that we have been harvested. Okay, good. Then X harvested is what? Is set to number. Now the reason why I made this label and not okay, range is when you can drag that. You can see this, you can drag over here like this. Let me show you. So you see you can if you need something like this in your app, right, then use range. Okay, but then what I want, standard is this. So standard, you have this, and then you can increase or reduce it. But I don't want this plus or minuses over there. So that's why I just selected label, right? Okay, that's just to explain for those who are not sure why I did that. Okay, so damaged X will also be number. Also be number, and I'll set this to label. Click done, and then X in crate and then X without crate. Okay, so this one is actually going to be very interesting because I am not going to make these inputs. These are going to be numbers. They're both going to be numbers, but they're not going to be inputs. I'm going to have a formula in the spreadsheet because of a limitation in AppSheet. The kind of formulas I need to do these calculations, when I try to do it in AppSheet, it's going to require a lot of calculation power, and then sometimes app will break. So I'm not going to show this here. I'm just going to use formulas to do that. Okay, now recorded by, I'm going to put an initial value over here. That's going to be the user email. So it's always going to pick the user's email and place it in the spreadsheet for me. I'm going to save this. I'm going to click done. So recorded by user email. Let me save this and see if it will pop up. Good. So it picks up the user's email. So that's my email over there. Picks up my email. Okay, good. So once we have this in place, now what we're going to do is we're going to hide some of the columns that we don't want to show over here. So for instance, the ID column, there's no point where the ID column will need to show because we don't need it. So I'm going to just take it off completely. So don't show this column. Entry dates as well. Don't show that as well. And then the next one I'm going to hide completely from the app is the recorded by. Okay, that's my email. Now there are other columns that I'm not going to show over here, but then I'll need them in the app. So this particular view, I'm not going to show them, but I'll need them in the app. So let me click this, bring this down here, click inventory form here. Okay, so this link allows you to kind of go to the view that's running this particular, the UI that's running this particular view. Okay, good. So I'm going to come here, and then under column order, manually, I'm going to take out some of the columns I don't need to show in this particular view, even though I want them to be in the app in other views. So for instance, the egg movement, I'm going to take it out from this view. Okay, and then I'm going to take out X in crates and then X without crates. So ideally, when the person is recording a new egg quantity of eggs harvested, all the person needs to do is provide the eggs harvested and then the quantity that is damaged, and then the rest will be formulas that will be calculated. All right, good. I'm going to click save here. So let's test this out. So over here, I'm going to provide, let's say we harvested 1,203 eggs, and then how many of those were damaged? Let's say 46 were damaged, right? And I'm going to click save. Okay, so we have this in place. This is the date, this is the egg movement, eggs entry, this is the eggs harvested, and this is the damaged eggs. When you come to the spreadsheet, you see the ID, which is automatically generated. Then we have the entry date. This is the exact moment when the eggs were entered, and this is the day the eggs were entered for, right? This is the eggs entry, this is the eggs harvested, right? There's a damaged eggs, the eggs in crates, eggs without crates, and then recorded by. Okay, good. So that's the first thing we're going to do. Let's come back over here. Now, there are a few things we need to do. Okay, so we need to calculate over here how many eggs do we have in crates and how many eggs do we have that are not in crates. Okay, now this is what I was talking about, where I said that AppSheet has some kind of, limitation, because you can't do sort of like cellular calculations where you can select a particular value and then reference it in your formulas and all those things. So let me just demonstrate this and explain. I'm going to change this view to tabular. Okay, so we have X movement, movement type. We have X harvested, damaged. What I want to calculate is X in crate and X without crate. Okay, so let me just first do this with formulas and then you see what the issue is. Okay, so ideally, if I wanted to calculate the X in crates, what I'm going to do is I'm going to click a plus button over here. So I'm going to call this virtual. It's a virtual column. I'm just demonstrating. Virtual X in crates. Okay. Now the formula I would have used, or I'm going to use in my spreadsheet, is going to be, okay, the X harvested, right, minus damaged X. Okay, so the X harvested minus the damaged X, okay, all divided by 30. So let me put this here, because in a crate you have 30X. Okay, now this is going to give you a decimal, okay, if you don't have exactly divisible by 30. So what we want to do is we want to get exactly divisible by 30. So we use floor. So if, let's say, you have 62X, right? You know 62X can give you two sets of 30 and then 2X. So we're going to have 2 as the answer, and then the 0.2, which is going to be a decimal, we're going to calculate it as X without a crate. So this gives you the exact number of X, or perfectly full crates. Let me say that, perfectly full crates. Good. I'm going to save this as X in crates. Good. So you have what, 38X in crates. Good. And then I'm going to create another virtual column. X, call this virtual so we can tell the difference. X without crates. Good. So which X don't have crates? So first we need to pick the virtual X crate and let's do the calculation. Okay. So we have over here floor, the same formula. So first we need to calculate the total number of X we have. So X harvested minus damaged X. Right, this gives us a total number of X that are good for sale. Then we're going to less what we have, that's a virtual X in crate. So I'm going to say virtual X in crate multiplied by 30. Do you get this? So this gives us the number of X that are good. So for my first scenario, let's say we have 62 good X from taking the X harvested minus damage. We have 62. Now remember our virtual X in crate gave us 2 because we had 2 perfectly fit or 2 perfectly full crates. Okay, so we take the 2, we multiply it by 30, that gives us 16. So when we subtract the 2, we get our what? When we subtract these 2, we get our 2 remainder. I'm going to save this. I'm going to click done. So you have what, 17 what remaining X. I'm going to save that. Okay, so now you are going to be wondering, okay, so at this point, what's the problem, right? Because we've been able to calculate our virtual X in crate, we have the X without crate, right? But then the problem is when we're trying to create for the next level, because in the next row, we need to select the 17X that do not have a crate and add it to the X harvested and take out the X damaged, right? Before we can get our new set of what crates of X. So what this means is that we need another level. So we need to create a column that is virtual, we'll say previous X without crate. Previous X without crate. Okay, so the function we're going to use is index. Okay, now in index, all you need to do is provide it a list or a column and tell it the position of the item you want to pick. So in this case, we're going to say index, we'll say the table is inventory, virtual. So go to the virtual X without crate, right? And I want you to pick, let's say the first one. Do you get it? So when I select this and I press enter, and I press C, done, right? This virtual, so it takes previous. So you say it's picking the first one, which is 17. Okay, so let me add a new data for tomorrow. So 11th, 2222. Okay, let's say damage was 65, and I'm going to save this. So we have 2 entries. Okay, so now you realize that the virtual or the previous will pick the first one because I said always pick number 1. Okay, good. So if I enter yet another one, okay, let's say 402, damage was, let's say 140, and I save. Okay, the dates are the same, but bear with me. You notice that it's still picking what, number 1, right? Because in the formula I placed what index, and I said what, pick the first one, number 1. So we want a dynamic formula will ensure that it will pick the subsequent one as we go down. So I'm going to preview this data so I appreciate it better. Good. So over here you realize that this is the exact same thing I was showing you. The virtual previous X without create picks the very first one because in our formula we said index and pick number 1. Okay, but what we want to do is to select subsequent ones. Now we can use the row number as a good guide. Okay, so you see over here it's number 2. So for number 2, there's no previous, so it should be 0. But for number 3, it should pick number 1. For number 4, it should pick number 2. For number 5, it should pick number 3. Do you get it? That's for the virtual X without create. So you realize that every row number minus 2 will give us the ideal virtual X without create number we want to pick. Okay, so we're going to come that and tweak our formula. So over here, we're going to say instead of 1 or hard-coded number, we're going to take the row number minus 2. Save, and let's see how that works. Good. So over here, you see, so for this one, there's no previous, so it's 0. For this one, the previous is 17. For this one, the previous is what? It's 27. If we calculate another one, the previous is 12, and we'll pick that. Do you get it? So now life looks good. The issue is when we try and bring this back into our formula. So you notice that now we need to include this previous X or previous X without create back here in this calculation. So let's come here. So virtual X in create therefore will now be the previous X plus the X harvested minus what? Damaged X. So we save this, click save, and let's see what's going to happen in the app. Okay, so now you see that what the app is taking a very long time to recompute, right? And it's going to happen this way. The app is going to take so long to recompute, and eventually it's going to break. So let's observe. Okay, so you notice what it's not loading anymore. It's stopped loading. When you click cancel results, please contact what app creator because the app could not load. Because of this, including this virtual column right in there, it takes so much time and so much energy of AppSheet to try and calculate this. Okay, so that's why we need to do the calculation in our spreadsheet. Okay, but then the calculation in our spreadsheet, we're not going to rely on it for calculations whatsoever. What I'm going to do is it's just for the user to be able to know how many creates were available at the end of every period. Okay, at the actual calculation, we're going to do it in the app. Okay, because I always prefer doing your calculation in virtual columns than doing calculations in a spreadsheet. It should only be critical when you need to rely on spreadsheet formulas for your app sheet. All right, so we're going to do these calculations in here without having to do this previous X. Let me delete this virtual column. Okay, so the formula, we're going to use all the columns for the X harvested and all the columns in the X damage. Okay, we're not going to do it row by row. We're going to do it column base. So I'm going to change or tweak this formula and say what? Inventory, X harvested, inventory, X damage. So we have this. Okay, so take all this column minus all of this divided by 30. Now, because you're doing a column by column basis, AppSheet cannot really necessarily do one column minus another. So we need to say sum of this Okay, and then sum of that. Now you do sum of this, sum of that, you subtract it, then you divide it by 30, then that should work. So now click save. Now you see what we're going to have. Now you notice that for the virtual x, I'm going to get the same value throughout because it's the same formula for all of them. Do you get it? So it's going to be the same thing throughout. Then we're going to do the same thing for virtual x without create. So we're going to say sum inventory this minus inventory that this way. Sorry, this should be this way. Good. So sum of this minus, oh, what am I doing? Sum of this, then this is inventory. Good. So this should work great. So I'm going to click save here. We'll have this. So you should have something like this. So you have virtual x and you have x without create. So at every point in time, it's going to give you the exact number of virtual x in create, or the exact number of x in create you have, right? And then it's going to give you the exact number of x you don't have in create, but throughout the entire data set, okay? Not on a row by row level, okay? So throughout for the entire column. Good. Now, because this is not so useful for the user, right? He can't really appreciate why you have 225 repeating throughout and 26 repeating throughout. What we're going to do is we're going to calculate the row by row level for him to appreciate that in the spreadsheet. But then in our calculations or in our views, we're going to rely on the virtual column. Okay, so we're going to come back here. And here we're going to now do our calculations. So the x without create, or the x with create, is going to be equal to, so floor, right? We're going to select the sum of the, okay, let me just do it this way. So floor, we have x harvested minus x damage, okay, all divided by 30. So I'm going to put this in parentheses, and then I'm going to put this way. Do you get it? Enter. So you have something like this. Good. Then the x without creates are going to be x harvested, so in brackets, the x harvested minus the x damaged, okay? Then I'm going to less this by, again, floor, okay, into brackets, the x harvested minus the x damaged, right? And then we're going to multiply this by 30. So this minus that, all subtracted by this, sorry, divided by this. Good. So this minus this gives me 1157. Okay. And I'm going to subtract this by, so this divided by this, this was 1157, then floor of that, which is this. Good. And then I'm going to multiply this by 30. That gives me 17. Good. So you have, let me go into my formula this way. All right. So you have this minus this. That gives us the number of good x we have. I am subtracting it by the number of good creates we have, which is this, multiplied by 30 to give you the number of individual x you have in a good crate. Okay. That gives us 17. Great. So we have this in place. Now, what is going to happen is that if this is 17, okay, this particular formula is supposed to take into account or take into consideration the 17 you have above it. So I'm going to say over here, this. So I'm going to say plus. I'm going to select this. Okay. So it's going to become the x without create, the previous entry x without create, right? So this plus this minus that divided by 30. You see that over here, and the formula here is also going to take the same thing into consideration. So plus, so this plus that minus this, And then I'm going to bring a plus here, right, to select this as well. So you have this in place. I'm going to copy this down. Okay, so we have 145 here, taking this into consideration, and you have this. So good. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to make this cumulative. That's the X in crate. So we have 38 over here. It should add up to this and add up to that. So once again, in here, we're going to change this formula and then add up our initial X in crate at the top here, and then add it over here. Good. So we have 255 and then 26, right? So 255 and 26, and that is what we have over here. 255 and what, and 26. Do you get it? It's cumulative. Good. So now we have the explanation for the user to see how we came about the 255 and 26, and that's what we're going to show in the app. So I'm going to make this formula available for all the cells below, so that when new data comes in, it just runs. Okay. So I'm going to come to the second cell, because the formula in the second cell is different from the one in the first one. The first one doesn't have a previous. So in the second one, I'm going to say equal to if this is equal to nothing, give me nothing, else give me the formula I have in place, right? I'm going to copy this, close you here, enter, come here, and I'll paste the same if here. So if this happens to be nothing, give me nothing, else give me everything here. I'll close this as well and enter. Once we have those two in place, I'm going to highlight this and then copy down. So Control D to copy this down, and then I'm going to have the same formula sitting in the empty cells, just waiting for the data to come in. Okay, so when we come back to our app, what we're going to do is just regenerate so that the formulas we have in there will now reflect the values in the app. So we'll come here. Okay, good. And then we have now the breakdown X in crate, X without crate. So what is going to happen is that this virtual X in crate and virtual X without crate, they just give us the very last value that we need. Okay, so I'm going to take them out for now, right? And I'm going to leave X in crate and X without crate. So virtual column, so X without crate, over here, that's inventory. Let's come to views, inventory. Okay, and then I'm going to come to manual here. I'm saying, okay, don't show the X, this, don't show that as well. Good. So we have this, we have egg entry, X harvested, X damage, X in crate, or X without crate. Okay, so these are X in crate and these are X without crate. Now, it's very important to note that this formula is cumulative, right? So we have to ensure that the user doesn't record a previous day or doesn't record today before he records yesterday's own. He should always make sure that he records the previous day before the current date. So I'm going to click over here and I'm going to say, I'm going to edit this. So edit the date column, right? I'm coming to data validation. I'm going to say that the dates the person is entering cannot be greater than any other date that has been entered in that column. Okay, so first I'm going to say date that you're entering, that's this row's date. So I can do this. This row's date should always be greater than, right? It should always be greater than the date you are entering for the egg entry. Okay, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to select inventory date where movement is equal to egg entry. The reason I'm going through this process and not just selecting the date column is because I also have sales records, or whenever I sell a crate of egg, I'm going to have it over there. So I just want to make sure that I'm selecting just the egg entries. Okay, great. So I have this in place, right? This is going to make sure that the dates is always supposed to be greater than the last entry dates I have made. So I'm going to click this, I'm going to click save. And I have an error. All right, what's my error? So date, we cannot compare a date with a list. Oh, okay, great. Sorry. So this has to be the maximum. I forgot that, max. Okay, done and save. That's it, great. So what this means is if I try and enter information for today, and I click save, wow, that shouldn't have worked. Well, our formula didn't work, and let's investigate why this didn't work. So when you come to dates, okay, when you come to our formula, that's data validation, we are saying this row dot date max select egg movement is equal to egg entry. I thought that would work, but when you check our column here, we have what? X entry, right? So formulas are very particular. It has to be X entry, not egg entry. Okay, X entry. And let's see if this time around it will work. So I'm going to click here, and I'm going to click some quantities over here. Yes, yeah, what? If entry or this entry is invalid. We can give the user some help to understand why it's invalid. So over here, we have what? Error message. We can say date should not be lower than previous date entries. So if we try this again, I click save, this should not be lower than what previous date entries. Okay, so that's good enough. I'm going to save this. Okay, so now at least we put that control in there to make sure someone doesn't enter previous or lower date. Okay, now the next thing we need to do is to create our view. Where is it? So we want to create this, right? Where we have our summary page and then we have our inventory records. Okay, so our summary page is a detail view, simple detail view over here that shows us as the last entry that has been made. And then our inventory shows us all the records basically. Okay, so let's go and create first the inventory records because that's very simple. That's basically this, but we're just going to break it down or group it into years and month. So we're going to come here and then we're going to add a year column. So it's going to say this is here. Okay, and this is going to be use the text function. We'll select the dates entered and then we'll say express this in year. That's a format like this, and I'll save this, click done, and I'll do the same thing for month. So month, I'm going to bring this and say month, right? And then same thing, text, date, and I'm going to express this in month. So 3 M's are going to show, it's going to truncate the month into the first 3 characters. So January is going to be JAN, February is going to be FEB, March MAR, and so on and so forth. Now in AppSheet, it cannot sort it chronologically, right? It's going to sort alphabetically. So we're going to probably have April and August coming first because they start with A. So to prevent this, I'm going to bring the month number in front as well. So MM.MMM. So MM is a month number and dot represents the truncated month name. So I'm going to click done and see. That's my way around not being able to sort this. So now we'll come back to the view. What we're going to do is we're going to group this by year and then month, and then we're going to bring the row number. So you have the year, the month, and then this. So this is what I meant. You see, so 10.October. If I enter information for November, I'm going to have 11.November, and it's going to sort it that way. Else, you're going to have November above October because N comes before O. Right, good. So we have this in place. Right. I can group this by the sum of eggs harvested. What's the sum of eggs harvested? Who are you? Good, sum of eggs harvested. So you have 2024, you have this. In October, you have that. You have the information for October. So this is your inventory. That's the very first view we need. And the second one we need is going to be the summary view. That shows us the most current eggs entry that has been made. So we'll come here. We have this. Good. I'm going to come here to views, create a new view. I'm going to call this summary. Okay, now for this summary, I'm going to use the inventory data, but then I'm going to use a slice of it, right? I can't use everything. I need to use a slice of it. So I'm going to say create a slice. So I'm going to say most current egg entry data. So just want the most current egg entry data, right? So I'm going to create a formula for this. So what we're going to do is that we want to pick the column where the date is the largest and the movement type is what? Egg entry. So two conditions, so end. So first thing is that movement type is equal to what? X entry. That's the first condition. And the second one is that the date, right, is equal to the largest date. So for the X entry, so select, so max, select inventory date, where movement type is equal to X entry. So movement type is equal to, where movement type is equal to X entry. So these are the two conditions we want to be satisfied. I'll click save, click done, and save. Okay, so now all we need to do is to edit this view so that it looks exactly like what we want it to be. So I'm going to make this first a detail view. And the next thing we're going to do is we're going to make the date the header. Okay, so this is the header. So we have movement type. So what we're going to say is that we have these as our X harvested and X damage, right? And then we have the stock levels, which are X in crates and then X without crates. Now, these are actually the ones we're going to rely on, which is the virtual X in crates and then the X without crates, because remember that they are the totals. Okay, so we're going to use that. So let me just show you what the final output should look like. It should look like this. So we have last entry date and stock levels like this. So what it means is that we need to create this and then these headers. Okay, so we're going to come here, right? First, let's take out the columns we don't need, so it's a little cleaner. So movement type is going to go out, X in crate, X without crate, year, and the month is going to go out. So we just have this. Great. Now the next thing we're going to do is create our headers. So we'll come here to inventory. Okay, and I'm going to click this plus button. I'm going to say header 1. Okay, so this is the last entry date. Now to have that underline, we're using HTML tags to do the styling. Okay, so I'm going to use HTML h4 tag. Okay, so this is going to give me a header, but then the size is h4, which is small. So I'm going to say last entry. Okay, now you put this in double quotations. So last entry in double quotation like this. So last entry, I'm going to click save, and then you make this long text. Now, when you make this long text in the new versions of AppSheet, right, or in the settings, there should be an option to let AppSheet know that this is supposed to be an HTML tag. So when I click save, nothing happens, right? What I need to do is come to settings, right, and then I'll come to general. Okay, and then over here, preview new features. I'm going to click this activated. Now I come back to data. Okay, and I come to header 1, right, and I have the option now to set this to HTML formatting. Okay, so what this means is when I click done now, right, let me just take it first to plain text. Click done, let you see what it looks like as a plain text. Summary. Okay, add. Okay, I'm going to add header 1. So you have this as a plain text, right? And then I'm going to set this as an HTML format. So I'm going to click on this edit button here, HTML. Okay, and then now you see what it's formatted as a as a header. It's bolding, right? Good. Now I can also bring the underline option here by including the underline tag. So when I come here, enter, all right, HR, which is a self-closing tag. So it's like this. I click save, click done, and then you have the underline literally there. Do you see that? Great. So we're going to do the same thing for what our stock level as well. So I'm going to come here, click list plus. I'm going to say header 2, right? Also is going to be H4, so double quotation, H4 tag. You get it? I'm going to say stock level, right? And then I'm going to bring the underline here as well as a self-closing tag, HR, self-closing tag like this. Okay, I'm going to click save, click done, come here, view, under format, I'm going to say, okay, add this header 2, right? I didn't make this a long text. Okay, let me bring this here. Okay, good. Come back here, header 2, set this to long text, and then make this HTML. Okay, good. So you have this. So you have header 1, header 2. Now, obviously, we don't want the header 1 and header 2 to be there. They shouldn't show us that. So I'll come to the column, display name, and I'm going to just make the display name a space so it doesn't show. Same thing for header 2, display name. So that means the name is that's going to show in the app, will just be a space. So take that out as well. I'm going to click save. Okay, so we're almost there. We have our header, so that's the last entry. We have the stock levels. I just need to position it well. So I'll come to views. Okay, and then I'm going to bring the H2 just above the virtual column. So we have last entry, this and that, stock levels, this and that. Now I don't want virtual X in crate, virtual X without crate. So what would I do? I'll change the display name. Great. So I'll come here, click this, come to display name. So I'm going to call this crate of X, right? Save, done. And I'm going to come, and then the display name, this is going to be X without crate. And I'm going to save this. Done, and save. So we have this in place, right? Last entry, X with crate, X without crate. So now all I need to do is take this off, the edit button. I'm going to hide this. So it's just a view, that's a summary view. And I'm going to create a dashboard to put this and that together. So views, create, new view. I'll call this X record. Okay. And I'm going to make this a dashboard view, and I'll put two things together. First is summary, second is inventory, right? So you have summary and then you have inventory. I'll make it tab. So you have summary and you have inventory. You see that? So nicely done, summary and inventory. I will take this guy off. So inventory, make it ref, make summary also ref, right? So this guy, summary, ref, inventory. Why am I not going to inventory? Ref, and then egg records should be the main, it should be in the middle. So you have egg records and you have cover page. Cover page, for now, we're going to keep cover page in the menu. Okay, I know that was a lot, but then we are just basically making every other thing either ref or menu. Egg records is going to be a dashboard view and it's going to remain center. Right, so let me save this. Great. So basically, when you open your app for the very first time, you should have this welcome Owens form. Hey there, welcome to official app. Then you click on this, you have the summary view, right? And you have the inventory records. Did you get it? Good. Now you notice our plus button for the inventory records is gone. Where we click and we record a new entry, it's gone. So don't panic, that's because it's a dashboard view. So we just need to bring it back. So I'll click on, so you just need to bring it back. So I'll click on the settings, and at general, when you come to view type or view type options and the dashboard, you see show primary actions in dashboard. Click that, then you have this. So you can make a new entry. Okay, so in inventory, you can make a new entry, or you can do this in summary. In the next video, I will show you how you can bring the action button to the summary page. So when you click here, you can directly just enter instead of having to come here and enter. So that is how you create your first component or your first aspect of this app, which is our simple business app for an egg farm. So I hope you enjoyed this video and enjoyed this session like I did. And I hope you are waiting to see the next video. So stick and stay, and then we'll meet again. Bye.